Behold, the sun is setting in a great fire. It is a sign of the end and fall of many things, and a change in the tides of the world. But this city and realm has rested in the charge of the stewards for many long years, and I fear that if I enter it unbidden, then doubt and debate may arise, which should not be while this war is fought. I will not enter in, nor make any claim, until it be seen whether we or Mordor shall prevail.
Welcome to the Wayward Wizards podcast. Today we're reading Book 5, Chapter 8 of The Return of the King, The Houses of Healing. My name is Logan.
And my name is Zach.
Here we are, Zach, at the Houses of Healing. The chapter everyone thinks of when they think of Lord of the Rings. The number one chapter about the hospital.
Oh, man, this is a rough read. I mean, this is the in-betweener of all in-betweeners. J.R.R. Tolkien, professor, if you're listening, and I hope you are, this is when you needed an editor the most. Like, how many months of his life do you think he spent laboring over just this chapter alone?
Zach, he wrote it by hand. By hand.
Oh, so many hours he spent. Like, and we're reading this and we're like, just get to the good part, man.
I mean, I don't know. This is the one I was reading this today, and I was just like, I don't like this chapter. I don't care about this. This is the only time, and I've never felt that about any other chapter. There's other chapters where I've been like, yeah, it's sort of boring, but there's, but this chapter I'm just like, come on, dude. I don't know. I think there's interesting things in it, and I think, you love these characters, and it sets up things, and there's like, obviously there's stuff to talk about, but this is the only time where I've really felt like this is not interesting to me.
So why do you think we get this little in-betweener? What do you think he's getting at here? Like, why do you think this chapter exists?
Well, the thing that everybody's actually sick of is depression.
Yeah.
Or shell shock, or,
Yeah.
But not even shell shock, because like Eowyn's thing goes back to like watching Theoden fade under the tutelage of Wormtongue, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it really is more about the like spiritual evil of war.
Yeah.
Which is personified by the Nazgul, I think. And
yeah.
And so that's what I think is happening. Plus, I really do think that Tolkien deeply cares that Aragorn's claim to the throne is a claim based on not his martial power, but his power as a sort of Christ figure that brings healing and renewal to his people.
That raises a good question. Last episode you asked if Aragorn's claim was not recognized by Denethor or Boromir, would he have gone to war with Gondor? And I think that's pretty well answered here, because Éomer says when Aragorn is like, I'm going to camp outside the gates, I'm not going to come in until I'm invited. Éomer says, already you have raised the banner of the kings and displayed the tokens of Elendil's house. Will you suffer these to be challenged? And Aragorn says, no, but I deem the time unripe, and I have no mind for strife, except with our enemy and his servants. And so that kind of answers the question there, doesn't it? It's like, will you suffer these to be challenged? He says, no, but he doesn't want strife with anybody but the enemy or his servants. The implication there being that, if he needed to, though, he would go to war. Right?
Yeah, I think so. But I just know that it's not going to be his primary way. And it maybe never would have been, only if he's like really pushed to it. Is that the option?
Yeah. There's kind of like a both and. He's like, yeah, I won't be denied, but also I'm not going to do this the wrong way. I'm going to do this in a way where I'm received openly by my people, which is exactly what happens in this chapter. I think you made a really good point earlier. You said it kind of half jokingly, but I think it's true that what everybody's suffering from is actually depression. I mean, Eowyn is sort of spiritually injured by the circumstances leading up to, her being in this place,
Yeah.
by the fact that her potential isn't recognized because of her gender. That kind of slowly suffocates her. And then Faramir, his injury doesn't come from the fact that he's been shot by an arrow. The real wound is that his dad didn't love him.
Yeah, it says that he's struck by a black dart, but the black dart was not such a grievous injury that
Yeah.
they would expect this kind of a response. And I think it's cumulative. Like, it's the relationship with the father, but it's the relationship with the father plus all the stress of battle plus this wound.
Yeah.
So that it's complicated, but I definitely think that the relationship with Denethor is a huge piece of why he ends up where he does. And then even in like the way that they're healed, there's sort of like a call from Aragorn, from the king, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But then also this like aroma,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like wholeness.
And it seems like it's connected somehow to Valinor. Like you'll
Yeah, right.
notice when Aragorn asks after it, the lore master, the herb master, uses all the different names that he knows for it.
Yeah.
And one of them is Valinorian.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's interesting.
And when they put hot water on and bruise the leaves and put the hot water on it, it says that it comes with like a fresh wind.
Yeah, seems that a wind came through the window or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is like another grace of the Valar. This is like comes all the way from the west.
Yeah.
What they're experiencing is really like almost like the like what it would be like to be in the presence of the Valar.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
So what do you think? Should we kind of jump in?
Yeah, we should. I mean, honestly, the best thing about this chapter is that Merry and Pippin get reunited. The hobbits, when they're together, are like, I don't know, they're just the best. They're the best.
There's hobbitry between the hobbits, but there's also hobbitry between Aragorn and Eorith, the old woman in the Houses of Healing, and Aragorn and the hobbits. There's just lots of like quipping going on in this chapter. The last that we saw Merry, Theoden and Eowyn have been kind of picked up and are being taken towards the city, and Merry is just kind of following behind. And
Right.
people really aren't paying much attention to him, but he's following behind them. It says, a mist was in Mary's eyes of tears and weariness when they drew near the ruined gate of Minas Tirith. He gave little heed to the wreck and slaughter that lay about all. Fire and smoke and stench was in the air, for many engines had been burned or cast into the fire pits, and many of the slain also. The flying rain had ceased for a time, and the sun gleamed up above, but all the lower city was still wrapped in smoldering reek.
He ends up getting lost. He's just sort of walking in a daze, and it says that as he walks, the torches in front of him had flickered out, and he thinks that he's in a tunnel leading to a tomb where he'll stay forever.
Yeah.
But then, of course, he hears Pippin.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that his friend, like the voice of his friend, is kind of what calls him out of this tunnel.
Yeah.
Pippin cheerfully says, well, Mary, thank goodness I found you. I mean, that could just be like, he runs into him at the pub.
Yeah, right.
Here they are in the midst of this like horrendous battle.
But, Pippin lets them know the others have been taken up to the Citadel, and he says, I think you must have fallen asleep on your feet and taken a wrong turning. And Gandalf had sent him to look for him.
And he asks him if he's wounded, and Mary says no. He says, well, I don't think so, but I can't use my right arm. Such an interesting
That's how people in shock kind of
response. Yeah,
exactly. People in shock kind of are like, oh, I'm fine, except, like my foot won't stop bleeding.
Yeah.
It's like
I can't move my feet. Yeah.
You are not fine.
Yeah, Mary says, not since I stabbed him and my sword burned away like a piece of wood. So
Oh, yeah.
Pippin can't have any idea what he's talking about here. So he must just seem like he's just like, raving.
Right.
But Pippin is like, hey, you better come with me as quick as you can. And what he says is like, they shouldn't let you walk. Like clearly he's like not well. It says you aren't fit to walk any further. They shouldn't have let you walk at all, but you must forgive them. So many dreadful things have happened in the city. One poor hobbit coming in from the battle is easily overlooked. And that's when Mary's like, it's not always misfortune being overlooked. Like, in fact, I was overlooked just now, and he starts to tell him what happened. But yeah, the fact that he's so easily overlooked is what let him succeed in his task.
Yeah, that's right. Help me, Pippin. It's all going dark again and my arm is so cold. So he leans on Mary and they go as far as they can.
And who do they run into?
Beargill.
Good old Beargill.
It's funny, he's been in the city the whole time.
This might be reading a little bit too far into it. I read like a change in Beargill's tone. There's like a
Oh, really?
there's like a seriousness to Beargill, in just the short number of days since we saw him last. Pippin says, "Hello, Beargill. Where are you going? Glad to see you again and still alive." And Beargill doesn't say like, "Oh, hey, Pippin," or he just says, "I'm running errands for the healers. I cannot stay." And Pippin says, "Don't, but tell them up there that I have a sick hobbit, a Parian, mind you, come from the battlefield. I don't think he can walk so far. If Mithrandir is there, he will be glad of the message." And Beargill doesn't even respond. He just runs off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting observation that he's forced to grow up a little because he's got a job, and it's a pretty serious job,
Yeah. But he does it because Gandalf comes.
Yeah, Gandalf does come and get Mary, and I think it's really sweet how he stoops over, he caresses Mary's brow, and then he lifts him up, like you would with a child.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "He should have been born in honor into this city. He has well repaid my trust, for if Elrond had not yielded to me, neither of you would have set out, and then far more grievous would the evils of this day have been."
Wow. There's some payoff.
That is a great payoff. Yeah.
I mean, that's set up all the way back in the Council of Elrond.
Maybe that's the best sentence in this chapter.
Thanks so much for reading along with us this week. No, we're going to keep going.
But that's so sweet, because I'm sure that in the Council of Elrond chapter, we say, like, why would you choose Merry and Pippin and not, one of Elrond's sons?
Yeah.
Or
I mean, we've speculated on that a dozen times in this pod. Like, why not the sons of Elrond? Why not Glorfindel? Why not, like, I don't know, Glowin? Like, almost anybody I can imagine being more useful than these two
guys,
numbskulls.
But they, in their own way, and I think it's kind of through their purity of heart. That's the thing about hobbits, right? Is like their purity of heart leads them to places and to encounters and to accidents that end up being, of ultimate concern to everybody involved.
Yeah, Gandalf tells Elrond essentially like the power of their friendship is going to be more valuable than another sword or another skillful warrior, and that's Gandalf's wisdom, right? I mean, he's absolutely right.
Yep.
So Faramir and Éowyn and Meriadoc are laid in beds in the houses of healing, and it seems like this is like the only place that women are allowed to stay in Gondor, like during this war.
Yeah.
The way that Aragorn and Gandalf kind of like interact with Yorith and the other healers is just kind of like it's funny.
I think it's meant to be funny. I think that the Yorith in particular, I sort of read her with sort of like a Cockney accent, and she gives it as good as she gets it. I think she doesn't really back down in the face of Aragorn.
It's interesting. I mean, like, she is like one of like 4 female named characters in this entire book, and she's just kind of a nag.
Yeah, she sort of is.
Yeah, it's not the best look for Tolkien, but I do think her character is funny. She's kind of affable. Yorith and the what's the name of the other like lore master, the herb guy? I don't know if he's named. It just says the herb master.
I think it is just Herb Master.
Well, she and the Herb Master kind of like they have to kind of represent people that Tolkien knew in his like academic life, like people who knew like all these like little fun facts about things, but they kind of lose sight of like what their purpose is. At one point, he tells the herb master to go find someone of less lore and more wisdom. So these are like kind of like academic people, but Aragorn has like kind of like a more intuitive understanding of healing, right? And it kind of gets back to like what we've talked about a lot with magic. You know, like whenever he heals Faramir, Faramir says, "You called me." You know, so he he has like the power of command. Like he's able to call back people from illness, you know.
Yeah, it's been a while since we talked about power of command, but I definitely think that comes in here.
You know, he commands them to be well and they're well.
Which I wonder, I just wonder if Aragorn's power of healing goes beyond spiritual, like moral injury. Like if you were dying of something physically, could he just command you not to? I don't think so.
No,
He
no.
would. He actually does need the herb
Yeah,
lore, also, right?
right.
It's the interplay between the two things that also does matter. But I do think there's something powerful, philosophically or spiritually, whatever, theologically, about the idea that we're called into our lives
Mm,
in some sense,
mm.
and maybe that's part of what's happening with Aragorn's call, like past, like through this like coma or whatever they're in under the power of what do they call it, the black breath,
The Black Shadow.
black shadow, yeah, to being like called back into your life is
Yeah,
I don't know, comports with my own experience of, I don't know, depression and melancholy, uh, to some degree.
yeah. It says that the healers are wise and skilled in healing of all wounds and hurt, save old age only.
Yeah,
For that they had found no cure. And indeed, the span of their lives had now waned to little more than that of other men, and those among them who passed the tale of 50 years with vigor were grown few, save in some houses of purer blood. But now their art and knowledge were baffled, for there were many sick of the malady that would not be healed, and they called it the Black Shadow, for it came from the Nazgul. So it's not just Faramir and Eowyn who are, and Mary who are suffering from this.
yeah.
Then an old wife, Yorith, the eldest of the women who served in that house, looking on the fair face of Faramir, wept, for all the people loved him. She said, "Alas, if he should die, would that there were kings in Gondor, as there were once upon a time. For it is said in old lore, the hands of the king are the hands of a healer, and so the rightful king could ever be known." And Gandalf's standing by, and he goes, "Men may long remember your words, Yorith, for there is hope in them. Maybe a king has indeed returned to Gondor, or have you not heard the strange tidings that have come to the city?"
I know a guy
Then we kind of zoom back to Aragorn and Eomer and Imrahil, who are
outside the walls.
outside the walls, kind of resting after the battle. You know, last we saw them all three together, it was, you know, in this like mourning of all the people that had just died. And this is where Aragorn says that he won't enter the city unbidden, so that doubt and debate won't arise. He says, "I will not enter in nor make any claim until it is seen whether we or Mordor shall prevail." And he's going to pitch his tents outside of the city.
But Prince Imrahil is like, yo, I'm not going to have you sit out here like a beggar at the door of the city
Yeah.
because you deserve better than that. But Aragorn says, not a beggar, say a captain of the Rangers, who are unused to cities and houses of stone. So he kind of gives an excuse. He's like, there's a reason I need to stay with my dudes. And then he does furl his banner,
Yeah.
and then he gives them to the sons of Elrond. So he's very strategic, about the way that he wants to appear here. He really doesn't want to just march into the city as a,
No.
conquering hero.
No. So Prince Imrahil and Éomer leave Aragorn, who stays outside of the city. I mean,
Yeah.
for all of a page, like he's about to come Like,
Yeah, kind of feel like he follows them immediately.
yeah, it's they get to the hospital and they're like, "Yo, if only somebody was here." And he's like, "I'm here." It's like, man, it's a little dramatic, Aragorn. This is where Imrahil and Éomer first find out that everything that's happened with Denethor. Like, they have no idea that Denethor has gone mad.
Yeah, his house his house is in ashes, Gandalf says, and it says that they were filled with grief and wonder at the tale.
Yeah, and Éomer is like, "Oh, what about Lady Éowyn?" Like, they come into the
He thinks she's dead, kind of, right?
yeah, they come into the seat of Denethor, like where Denethor's seat is, and Theoden's body has been arrayed, sort of like in state with torches and attendants. And Éomer's like, "Hey, where's my sister?" And Imrahil's like, "Oh, did you not know that she was alive?" It's like, has this not come up between the two of them up to this point? I guess not. He says, "Where's Lady Éowyn, my sister? For surely she should be lying beside the king, and in no less honor. Where have they bestowed her?" And Imrahil's like, "Lady Éowyn was yet living when they brought her hither. Did you not know?" And Éomer, of course, is thrilled with this.
Imrahil is the one who kind of finds out she's not dead, right? He uses his armor or something. Is
Yeah,
that
he
him?
like gets like the mist of her breath over
Yeah, that's
the
right.
cold steel of his armor. They meet Gandalf and they say like, "Hey, where's the steward?" And "Where's the Lady Éowyn?" And this is where Gandalf kind of breaks the news about all that all that happened with Denethor. Says, "Lord Faramir was wounded by an evil dart, as you have heard, and he is now the steward. For Denethor has departed, and his house is in ashes." I mean, that's a little bit of wordplay there, of course. And everybody's filled with grief at this news. I like Imrahil's response. He says, "So victory is shorn of gladness, and it is bitter bought if both Gondor and Rohan are in one day bereft of their lords. Éomer rules the Rohirrim. Who shall rule the city meanwhile? Shall we not send now for the Lord Aragorn?" And that's the moment that Aragorn sort of comes out of the shadows and says, "He has come."
He has come. He says that he came because Gandalf begged him to.
But he's sure to establish, like, "Hey, I'm not here as the king. Right. I'm just here to help because Gandalf asked me to come."
I'm not here as the king, and I also think he also says Gandalf should kind of remain as the general. As long as we're dealing with the enemy, Gandalf should be the one who's in charge, which makes sense, right? Like Gandalf's the most powerful person in the room. Yeah, there's kind of an interesting. I mean, there's a fair amount of kind of like pretty subtle politics happening, I guess, in this chapter, which is kind of interesting.
Pippin sees Aragorn enter and he's like, "Strider, how splendid. Do you know I guessed it was you on those black ships? But they were all shouting Corsairs and wouldn't listen to me. How did you do it?" Oh, it's just
It's
like so
it's so
Pippin.
funny, and Aragorn gets a chance to laugh, and they shake hands. Well met indeed, but there's not time yet for travelers' tales. And Imrahil's like, "Is this how we speak to the kings, like
Yeah.
of Gondor?"
Yeah. It's like, good Lord. Yeah. It's like you guys are a little friendly with each other. But
Yeah.
Aragorn turns to him and says, "Verily, for in the high tongue of old, I am Elisar, the Elfstone, and Invinyatar, the Renewer." And he lifted from his breast the green stone that lay there. "But Strider shall be the name of my house, if that ever be established. In the high tongue, it will not sound so ill. And Telcantar I will be, and all the heirs of my body."
What do you make of that? That Strider shall be the name of my house.
I think he's lifting up the name that the hobbits have for him in high regard, but there's also the irony. It's got this like almost like it's got almost this kind of upside down logic, which is like the name that people gave me because of their hatred and distrust of me and Bree, I'll elevate to this like this name of my house as the king. I think it's a really beautiful kind of ironic choice.
It is good. I really like your reading of that.
So Aragorn joins everybody in the houses of healing. Aragorn stops and he sees Faramir first, then he moves on to Éowyn, and then he stops last at Merry, and he says, this is the second time that Elrond's name has kind of been brought up in this chapter. Would that Elrond were here, for he is the eldest of all our race, and he has the greatest power. That's interesting to say of Elrond. He's the eldest of all our race.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too.
Because I guess the implication is that Aragorn has like a small amount of elvish blood in him.
Yeah, and he's got like special power from Westerness or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
something about that connection makes them kin.
But Aemir says to Aragorn, he goes, first you must rest, surely, and at least eat a little. But Aragorn doesn't listen to that. He goes, nay, for these three, and most soon for Faramir, time is running out. All speed is needed. And then he calls over Yoreth and he says, you have store in this house of herbs and healing. She says, yes, Lord. And then she gives like the longest answer. She's like, she gives like a whole paragraph answer. Not enough, I reckon, for all that will need them, but I am sure I do not know where we shall find more, for all things are amiss in these dreadful days, what with fires and burnings, and lads run errands, and the lads that run errands so few, and all the roads blocked. Why, if it is days out of count since ever a carrier came in from Lossenark in the market, but we do our best in the house with all that we have, and I'm sure your lordship will know. And Aragorn is like, all right. He's just like, okay. He goes, one thing also is short, time for speech. So he's like, hey, lady, zip it.
You be quiet for a second. I'm trying to get something done here.
Yeah. He goes, have you Athlas? And then she gives another like long answer. I do not know, I'm sure, Lord, at least not by that name. I will go and ask the herb master. He knows all the old names. And Aragorn's like, oh, it's also called Kingsfoil. And he goes, and maybe you know it by that name, for so the country folk call it in these latter days. She goes, well, if your lordship had named it at first, I would have told you. No, we have none of it, I'm sure. I've never heard that it had any great virtue. And indeed, I have often said to my sisters that we came upon it growing in the woods, Kingsfoil. 'Tis a strange name. I wonder why it's called blah, 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 blah. And Aragorn is just like, oh my God, like, will you please let me do what I got to do right now?
Run as quick as your tongue and get me some Kingsfoil.
Yeah, he's like, if you love Faramir, run as quick as your tongue and get me Kingsfoil if there is a leaf in the city. And Gandalf says, and if not, I will ride to Lossenark with Yoreth behind me, and she shall take me to the woods, but not to her sisters. And Shadowfax will show her the meaning of haste. That little, but not to her sisters is so funny.
Yeah, it is funny.
There's definitely like the Oxford Dawn, like, oh my God, like, please, like the
Please
worst
stop
thing that I
talking.
could possibly do
Yeah,
is be in
listen
the
to
company
you
of
talk.
women. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly.
There's definitely that undercurrent in this.
Yeah, it's a little bit. I mean, I accepted it for the sort of like color that it gives the chapter, but it's yeah.
But yeah, in a chapter that's like already a little bit like, okay, like why do we have this? It's just like, do we really need this chapter? If this is your first episode listening to the Wayward Wizards podcast, Logan and I love this book.
This is our favorite book.
This is our favorite book.
Please listen to listen to the other episodes first.
It's like there's really nothing else that touches it.
It's not our fault that this is the worst chapter in the book.
Oh man.
So Aragorn says, put on a pot of hot water. I'm gonna make some tea here in a second.
Yeah.
And and then he kind of starts we still haven't gotten the Athlas, so he can't even start doing his thing yet.
We've already kind of talked about this bit here, but he looks to Faramir's wound and he says like, like who drew the arrow from him? Because he's like,
yeah, he's trying to get more information.
He wants to get as much information as he can. Imrahil's like, I'm the one who drew forth the arrow and I staunched the wound, but I did not keep the arrow, for we had much to do. So Aragorn's like kind of trying to like guess if he's been poisoned, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
He says, it was, as I remember, just such a dart as the Southrons use, which means like it's not a poisoned arrow, likely, because they're not the type to use poisoned arrows. He goes, yeah, I believe that it came from the shadows above, for else his fever and sickness were not to be understood, since the wound was not deep or vital. How then do you read this matter?
And there we go again. It's not because it's an orc arrow that has some kind of special power or a Nazgul arrow, but I mean, the arrow didn't help him. But
No.
it's like having taken the wound, because of his previous experience with Denethor, he doesn't have sort of like what it takes to like bear up under the wound, you know? I kind of think that's what's meant by that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think weariness is like kind of like an
Yeah.
old-timey way of saying depression. You know, it's like exhaustion or like any other like melancholy or black mood or whatever. Yet weariness, grief for his father's mood, a wound, and overall the black breath. So it's this like cumulative thing. I think you're so right. And as they're discussing this, the herb master comes in. The herb master is like another kind of like funny character. He's definitely got this like academic, like speaking way more than he needs to, you know, using 10 words when he could use one. And he knows a lot, but he's, you know, he's got more knowledge than he's got sense.
Yeah, that's right.
It says the herb master comes in and he says, "Your lordship asked for kingsfoil, as the rustics name it." The rustics is like such a funny, like that's definitely taking a dig at academics.
Right.
Or Athelos in the noble tongue, or to those who know somewhat of the Valinorian. "I do so," said Aragorn, "and I care not whether you say now Asea, Anarion, or Kingsfoil, so long as you have some." And he goes, "Your pardon, Lord. I see you're a lore master, not merely a captain of war." So he's like, "You're not just some sort of brute. Like you know a thing or two.
Yeah.
You're like me. You know, we're in the rarefied air."
Right.
He says, "But alas, sir, we do not keep this thing in the houses of healing, where only the gravely hurt or sick are tended. For it has no virtue that we know of, save perhaps to sweeten a fouled air or to drive away some passing heaviness." And then he gives a song that, you know, that women such as good Yorith still repeat without understanding. So he's like, you know, they're so dumb, bless them. You know, they say these old rhymes. They don't really even understand what they're saying. "When the black breath blows and death's shadow grows, and all lights pass, come Athelas, come Athelas." This is definitely a trend in Tolkien of like old wives' tales having some hidden truth
Wisdom.
to them. Exactly.
Yeah.
The wisdom of old wives being greater than, you know, this like academic guy who thinks he knows more than everybody.
There's a little bit of like a character study here. I think you're so right, where like Tolkien is really a hobbit, right? Like he has manners. He knows how to
Right.
carry on a conversation.
Right.
He knows when to speak and when to be quiet.
Right.
He's not a stuffy old academic. And you can kind of imagine him being, because of his background, like having come up through all of this, you know, surrounded by a bunch of lordlings,
like aristocratic.
Exactly. And just kind of thinking like, oh man, these people are so full of themselves, you know?
Yeah.
And then, but then at the same time, like he's got enough kind of like learning and I can only think of it as manners, that like when he comes up against a woman like Yorith, he's like, oh my goodness, now I have to talk to you too.
Like, well, he's like smarter. Like Aragorn is smarter than the you know, herb master.
Yeah, right.
But
he's not full of himself.
He's not full of himself, exactly.
Because he knows that he's smarter than the herb master. Whereas the herb master, his whole bearing is based on the fact that he knows a bunch of words that other people don't know. And Aragorn's like, yeah, actually, I know all the names for it too. Like, my grandfather's like actually named some of those things. So you don't need to tell me.
Yeah, exactly. I'd catch myself wondering, like, all right, which Oxford Don is this parodying?
I would love to know that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure it's more than one.
Beargill is the one who brings him to Athelas, huh?
Yeah, right.
Says, and at last Beargill came running in, and he bore 6 leaves in a cloth. "It's kingsfoil, sir," he said, "but not fresh, I fear. It must have been cold 2 weeks ago at the least. I hope it will serve, sir." And then looking at Faramir, he burst into tears. Oh, poor Beargill.
I know. But Aragorn says, "It will serve. The worst is now over." And that's because before the Athelas even comes in, he does this thing where he kind of calls to Faramir, each time more faintly to their hearing, as if Aragorn himself was removed from them and walked afar in some dark vale, calling for one that was lost. So there's some kind of magic happening there. And that call, as you were saying before, that kind of word of command.
Yeah.
is the thing that kind of does the most work here, maybe.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because as he says, the worst is now over. And he says, stay and be comforted. So he tells Beargill to stay. And then when he crushes the leaves, a living freshness filled the room, as if the air itself awoke and tingled, sparkling with joy. That's really beautiful.
And it says, for the fragrance that came to each was like a memory of dewy mornings, of unshadowed sun, in some land of which the fair world in spring is itself but a fleeting memory. Which makes me think that, like, it's like almost like bringing in like Valinorian
Valinorian air or
air.
something.
Yeah, exactly. This fresh air stirs Faramir, and he opens his eyes and he looks on Aragorn, and a light of knowledge and love was kindled in his eyes, and he spoke softly. My lord, you called me. I come. What does the king command?
Aragorn says, walk no more in the shadows, but awake. And Aragorn has to, move on to
To Eowyn.
Eowyn.
He sees that her shield arm has been maimed, but it's really her sword arm that is most wounded. There's no life in it. He goes, alas, she was pitted against a foe beyond the strength of her mind or body. And those who will take a weapon to such an enemy must be sterner than steel, if the very shock shall not destroy them. It was an evil doom that set her on his path. For she is a fair maiden, fairest lady of a house of queens. And yet I know not how I should speak of her. When I first looked on her and perceived her unhappiness, it seemed to me I saw a white flower standing straight and proud, shapely as a lily, and yet knew that it was hard, as if wrought by elf rites out of steel. Her malady begins far back before this day, does it not, Amir? And Amir's like, yeah, I mean, I'm dumb because I never noticed that she was sad until I saw her around you and saw just how deeply unhappy she is because she can't have you.
Yeah. But Gandalf corrects him. You had horses and deeds of arms in the free fields, but she, born in the body of a maid, had a spirit and courage, at least the match of yours. Yet she was doomed to wait upon an old man whom she loved as a father.
Yeah, so it seems like that's like what actually caused her injury. It's partly just that she is like looked down on because of her gender.
Yeah, and it says that she's like fettered like a wild animal. Like she's like shut up, and she never should have been.
Yeah, but it's also that, the same words from Wormtongue that poisoned Theoden's ears, she heard those words too. Like
Right.
Gandalf quotes Wormtongue, dotard, what in the house of Errol but a thatched barn where brigands drink in the reek and their brats roll on the floor among their dogs. He goes, have you not heard these words before? Sauron spoke them, the teacher of Wormtongue, though I do not doubt that Wormtongue at home wrapped their meaning in terms more cunning. My lord, if your sister's love for you and her will bent to her duty had not restrained her lips, you might have heard even such things as these escape them. So he's saying like, hey, like the same poisonous, like negative self-talk that poisoned Theoden's mind also poisoned hers. She goes, but who knows what she spoke to the darkness alone in the bitter watches of the night when all her life seemed shrinking and the walls of her bower closing in about her, a hutch to trammel some wild thing in. Yeah, so there you go. It's like, if you cage a wild animal, you cage any living thing, it kills it slowly.
Aragorn says that he has power to heal her body and recall her from the dark valley, but he worries that she'll awake without hope. And he said, he says, I don't know if she'll awake with hope or forgetfulness or despair. But if she has despair, then she'll die
Yeah.
unless other healing comes, which I cannot bring, which I think Faramir kind of ends up bringing, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the love between them that grows in the houses of healing.
Right.
But she's in a bad place because this goes way back before fighting, the Witch King.
So Aragorn calls her. He goes, awake, Eowyn, Lady of Rohan. And he takes her right hand in his, and he feels her life returning. He says, "Awake, the shadow is gone, and all darkness is washed clean." Then he laid her hand in Éomer's and steps away. "Call her," he said. And he passed silently from the chamber.
I like this line. As the sweet influence of the herbs stole about the chamber, it seemed to those who stood by that a keen wind blew through the window, and it bore no scent, but was an air wholly fresh and clean and young.
Yeah, that's Valinor, baby.
Yep, that's Valinor. And I like that Aragorn kind of like removes himself before she wakes up. Like it wouldn't be good for her to wake up and see Aragorn.
Yeah.
It's better for her to see her brother.
So Éomer is there when she wakes up, and he lets her know that Theoden is dead. She says, "That is grievous. And yet it is good beyond all that I dared hope in these dark days, when it seemed that the house of Eorl had sunken into honor less than any shepherd's cot." So she's saying, like, it's not good that Theoden is dead, but it is good that he came back to himself before the end, that the lies that Wormtongue told her are not true. But Éowyn asks after Merry, where is he? And she is sure to say that Éomer should make him a knight. And Gandalf answers that he's lying nearby and that he'll go to him soon. So Gandalf and Pippin come to Merry's room, and they find Aragorn standing next to him. Pippin says, "Poor old Merry," and runs to be next to him. And it says, "And suddenly a fear seized Pippin that Merry would die. But Aragorn says, 'Do not be afraid. I came in time, and I've called him back.'" It's such an interesting way of saying that you have healed him, that you called him back. It's almost like he's, that description we get of Merry feeling like he's walking down a tunnel and that everything is going dark. Maybe that's what, all of them are experiencing. We just kind of get a picture from Merry's point of view. But Aragorn calls him back. He says, "He is weary now and grieved, and has taken a hurt like the Lady Éowyn, daring to smite that deadly thing. But these evils can be amended, so strong and gay a spirit is in him. His grief he will not forget, but it will not darken his heart. It will teach him wisdom." For all the crap we've talked about this chapter,
Yeah, there's some really beautiful turns of phrase in here.
his grief he will not forget, but it will not darken his heart. It will teach him wisdom. It's beautiful.
Of course, the first thing Merry says is that he's hungry.
And then he asks, "What's the time?" It's like the number one thing that hobbits ask when they wake up.
That's so funny. I didn't
Is there
realize.
food?
Yeah.
Is there food? And what's
what
the time?
time is it?
Has a hobbit woken up once in this book and not asked what time it is?
I don't think so. I think they always ask what time is it.
And Pippin's like, "Past supper, dude. Like you slept past supper." Might be the first time that's ever happened in Merry's life. Says, "Though I dare say I could bring you something if they will let me." And Gandalf says, "They will indeed. And anything else that this rider of Rohan may desire, if it may be found in Minas Tirith, where his name is in honor." "Good," said Merry. "Then I would like supper first, and after that, a pipe." And he says, "No, not a pipe. I don't think I'll ever smoke again." He says, because the last thing that Theoden ever said to him was that he was sad that he didn't get to smoke with them and hear about his herb lore.
Yeah.
And Aragorn says, "Smoke then and think of him. For he was a gentle heart and a great king, and kept his oaths. And he rose out of the shadows to a last fair morning. Though your service to him was brief, it should be a memory glad and honorable to the end of your days." And Merry smiles and says, "Well then, if Strider will provide what is needed, I will smoke and think. I had some of Sauron's best in my pack, but what became of it in the battle, I'm sure I don't know." And Aragorn says, "Master Meriadoc, if your pack has not been found, then you must send for the herb master of the house. And he will tell you that he did not know that the herb you desire had any virtues, but that it is called Westman's weed by the vulgar, and Galanos by the noble, and other names in other tongues more learned. And after adding a few half-forgotten rhymes that he does not understand, he will regretfully inform you that he is none in the house, and he will leave you to reflect on the history of tongues. And so must I, for I have not slept in such a bed as this since I rode from Dunharrow, nor eaten since the dark before dawn." That's hobbitry at its finest in this.
Yeah, I love Aragorn just takes this opportunity to complain. because he's with his friends, right? He's with Merry and Pippin and Gandalf, and those are the people you can complain to. He's not going to complain to the healers in the house or to Prince Imrahil or any of those people, but he totally will complain to these two.
Merry says, "Oh, I'm frightfully sorry. Go at once. Ever since that night at Bree, we have been a nuisance to you."
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
But Aragorn doesn't take that. He leans down and he kisses him and he says, "May the Shire live forever unwithered."
Oh, beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Pippin says, "This is such a funny, isn't he so dreamy?
Yeah.
Was there ever anyone like him?" he said, except Gandalf, of course. I think they must be related.
Yeah. God, is Pippin not yet? No. I mean, how many times has Pippin wondered, what is Gandalf?
What is Gandalf?
Where does Gandalf come from? Is he related to Aragorn?
Are they cousins?
Oh, it's so funny.
But Longbottom Leaf it is.
Fill up while I run off and see about some food. This is an interesting little bit of Hobbit wisdom. It says, "It is best to love first what you are fitted to love, I suppose. You must start somewhere and have some roots, and the soil of the Shire is deep. Still, there are things deeper and higher, and not a gaffer can tend his garden in what he calls peace, but for them, and whether he knows about them or not." It's like a little reflection on there needs to be people like Aragorn in order for the Shire folk to live in the simplicity that they do. But he's almost like glad that they don't know.
But Aragorn's work is not done. They leave the houses of healing, but I think kind of everybody in town sort of brings him their they're sick and dying and injured.
Yeah, I mean, you said it earlier. It was like Christ-like, and it's so true. The crowds just kind of find him.
And it says that it's through this that they recognize him as the king.
Yeah, and that they see that he's wearing the stone that Arwen gave him, so they call him Elfstone. He says, "And so the name which it was foretold at his birth that he should bear was chosen for him by his own people." So it's foretold, but it's also just given naturally out of who he is that people would name him that. It's like a mix of fate and just who he is. And so Aragorn leaves the city after he's been named Elfstone, and it's like he leaves, and people are so like shocked and awed by this that they wonder if the coming of the king had been but a dream. Yeah, what a weird chapter.
Not time yet for Aragorn to be king, but he's getting there.
Yeah.
A very strange chapter indeed.
I'm very much looking forward to Book 5, Chapter 9, The Last Debate. This is an interesting chapter. This is kind of like the Council of Elrond a little bit. There's lots of like contingencies that they're working through, and I think a lot of the, I don't know, what have we been calling it throughout the pod? The Tolkien funnel. You start with multiple options, and then you kind of narrow it down to one possible option, and that's the one they go with. That definitely happens in the next chapter as well. Well, thanks so much for reading along with us this week. Hopefully you'll join us next week for Book 5, Chapter 9, The Last Debate. If you want to help out the podcast, the best thing that you can do is subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a rating, review, write a blurb, share the podcast with a Lord of the Rings fan in your life. Follow us on YouTube, or get more info by going to waywardwizards.com. See you next week.
We'll see you then.